Welcome back. Let's get into your market news now. And markets rose in Asia on Friday, though investors do remain cautious as they await developments after the failure, of course, of that Trump-Kim summit in Vietnam, while also keeping an eye on the standoff between India and Pakistan. Now, a better than expected reading on U.S. economic growth did also lift sentiment. That's around 2.6% there, while optimistic comments from the top White House economic advisor on the China-U.S. trade talks also then provided some support. It's a positive end to the week, however, in the Far East. Tokyo's Nikkei going up 1% at 21,602 points. Another index in the black, the Hang Seng, that hitting 28,812 points, moving around 0.5%, while the Shanghai Composite ticked up almost 2% there, just sitting below 3,000 points. Now, Wall Street's main indices fell slightly on Thursday as support from better than feared U.S. GDP data was countered then by concerns about earnings and the U.S.-China trade relations. The Dow Jones Industrial fell around 0.25% to 25,916 points. The S&P 500 lost a similar mark, and that was to close out the day at 2,784 points. The Nasdaq Composite was near 0.33% in the red, and that dipped towards 7,532 points. The markets themselves are fairly positive today, ending off the week on a much better note, around 0.2% to the good for the JSE All Share, firmly above that 56,000 key point mark. It is quite interesting there. The Rand, however, weakening, coming off that better than expected GDP number out of the United States, with the dollar strengthening. South Africa's currency then unfortunately seeing the back end of that uptake. So it falling now to around 14 Rand and 9 cents. Things out in Europe are, however, looking better as well, around 0.5% to the good as well for the FTSE out in London. The DAX as well doing better by around 1%. Let's check in on all those numbers, and I'll get into an analysis just after this. Sentiment and the only sector seemingly in the red this afternoon happens to be the gold indices, and those have continued to struggle quite a bit of late, and one will certainly have to look out for what exactly is going on there. Yes, the commodities are also down, but that Rand is also going to be a key phenomenon to watch out for. Let's chat about that market picture now. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital joining us in studio. Warwick, thank you so much for the time. Another Friday, another blistering sales event across the week, in a week where we saw so many earnings. I think yesterday was almost 18 companies reporting at some stage, so a few of them were perhaps missed by ourselves. Let's chat about BHP a little bit. That diversified miner is one that perhaps the market would have wanted a whole lot from. It has been a defensive stock, shall we call it. What is your sentiments around it?
Okay, so on BHP, the first earnings set came out about a week ago. They just updated that with some diversification in their board, so a more representative board coming through there. Yeah. And I think the market looking broadly comfortable with the stock. I think commodities are generally marking a little bit of time right now, of course, and those that are denominated in South African Rand, courtesy of the weaker Rand, starting to look like some quite firm numbers coming through there.
At the end of trade yesterday, just after the bell had gone, MTN puts out a trading statement saying that earnings are looking bright and dandy, and next week Thursday they will have an earnings report where things go up by between 80 and 90%, but this morning market's still down on them.
Yeah, there was an important issue. There was, on paper, the number was more or less in line with market expectations. However, market expectations didn't expect all of the big one-offs that one has to strip out there to smooth out that number. So, and those, of course, are things like the troubles that they had in Nigeria, which has finally had its elections and hopefully has got the political political problems out of the way there now. Hyperinflation, assorted forex issues from some really very tough geographies that they work in, and really I think the market hasn't done a good job in the past of really factoring in a cushion there for just how much political risk this group really has.
250 Rand, one would say, is where the share was trading about 3-4 years ago. Now at 80 Rand odd. Is it still good value for money? Is it perhaps set to reach a trough soon? Are we just waiting for it to sort out things in Nigeria? Or are we expecting it to continue to be volatile because of the areas it trades in?
I think probably good value where it is, but I think clearly it's going to take quite some time before the market actually develops a stomach and says, okay, we need to price in for a bit of volatility here, because clearly when things do go bad, they do go very, very bad.
Yeah, and they go bad, as you said, quite a lot there. Let's talk about another diversified miner, as we mentioned a little bit earlier. African Rainbow Minerals comes out with a set of earnings. Headline earnings going up 13% there, but the impairment of Nkomati, that mine, seemingly hurting the numbers quite a bit. I also got to chat to the CEO, and we'll play that interview a little bit later on. But it does seem, though, that they did take advantage of the better state of palladium, the things like iron ore, manganese as well, so they found their way through the market.
Yeah, I think a good set of operating numbers on the whole. I mean, the full year market expectation is a little bit higher, probably in the order of 17% so on the face of it, the 13 for interims would seem a bit light. However, the next period is going to show a relatively much stronger set of earnings because of where the rand was. The prior period had Ramaphoria, and that, of course, now will be somewhat out of the way. So I think those results should go quite a lot better. I mean, turning to the operating numbers themselves, I mean, broadly solid across most of the categories there, and I think perhaps in relation to Nkomati, I mean, there obviously would have been concerns about that for quite some time, and the fact that the company is now grasping the nettle and saying, right, let's fix or finish is perhaps a constructive place to be.
Yeah, it would be certainly interesting to just see how they actually navigate through the space, with hopefully palladium prices continuing to head in that similar direction. They might actually do away with that Nkomati mine, and we're not sure how true that is, but that's the state of mining in South Africa, isn't it? That you try and streamline, just get into the businesses that are going to make you money. If not, you bow out.
Well, absolutely. I mean, mining is a very high capex business. I mean, if it's not working, it probably hasn't been working for quite some time, and really hope is not a strategy in that space. Yeah,
and Nkomati does have a short lifespan as well, around 8 years or so, so maybe not too bad in terms of cutting losses there. Distel also coming out there with their interim set of earnings. I found the brewing business so difficult. Yesterday we just came out with Anheuser-Busch InBev as well. They're also suffering along. They perhaps didn't get into the market and thought they'd be here, but they play over the long term. You think that Distel is still a great business?
Okay, so I think it showed certainly a recessionary set of numbers. I mean, effectively there's brewing in the cider business, and then distilling and wine production. So it's a bit of a broader church than Anheuser-Busch. Yeah. We saw actual volumes, particularly in South Africa, were actually down 2%. We're talking about there. So they clearly focused on high margin business. So not a big set of growth in numbers there, but you can also see that in terms of operating in recessionary times, they went for high cash flows. So they clearly focused on defensiveness, preservation, nothing too ambitious there. It was an okay set of numbers under the circumstances.
Weakening rand to 14 Rand 9 cents, that's going to hurt?
It's probably helpful given the exports.
Yeah, so you reckon it should stay that way, perhaps, as sustainability at these levels?
I think sustainability is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the prospects for the rand going forward, I mean, we've got a bit to work through, and quite frankly, one of the biggest things that's been leaning on the rand in the last 5 years is a level of disinvestment from South Africa. 450 billion from September 2013. That's a whopper number, and this country has to reverse that.
Jeepers, we need that number back fast. Warwick, appreciate your time. Have a wonderful weekend as well. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital, please do come back next Friday. More business news coming up right after this. This is Market Sense here on Point. Stay with us.